Okay, number 3, the summer of George rolls on, and we have with us another guest, and it's our very good friend of the program, Tyler R. McAfoose. He won't be giving any financial advice tonight, so don't worry, folks at home, if you're listening, if you're his bosses. Cool your jets. Take it easy. Okay? No hate mail. There's not going to be any hate mail. Ty, what's your episode for Summer of George?
The Chinese restaurant.
Okay, so just to get in here, a little bit of the plot synopsis. Do you want to do that, or you want me to do that because I have the document here in front of me?
Yeah, just go ahead and
Okay,
run
the
through
Chinese
the plot
restaurant
synopsis.
is the 11th episode on the second season of Seinfeld. The episode revolves around Jerry, Elaine, and George waiting for a table at a Chinese restaurant on their way to see a special one-night showing of Ed Wood's infamous science fiction feature, Plan 9 from Outer Space. George tries to use the phone, the payphone, but is constantly interrupted and occupied, and Jerry recognizes a woman, but he is unsure where he has seen her before. There's some other, that's the kind of the main overview.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens that are just outlandish and a very, very limited episode. So much happens.
Yeah, it's an interesting episode for a lot of reasons, like some of the trivia behind.
Yeah.
So do you want to? Can you?
I mean, in real time, like 15 years, however many, 25 years ago, you don't really have the understanding of all that production behind the scenes stuff. So just taking it in as for what it's worth is really what draws, I think, people to episodes like this and the parking garage and the bottle deposit and things like that, where it's so relatable. Waiting in line at a restaurant to get a table is the most human thing ever. You're hungry, you want to sit down, and I was here before them. Like, all of the jokes that come into play are just dynamite. And I think that the little writing cleverness that LD and Seinfeld have are, I guess, second to none. I can't think of somebody else that's more brilliant than these two combined. But the I mean, we could get into all the little nuances of this, but George's stories about his girlfriend, and we can go through all that
he
stuff.
Says he has an intestinal
requirement, an intestinal requirement. Yeah. Like the writing of that, like, how are you going to have to say that I have to use the bathroom while I'm getting it on with some girl? Like, well, I have this intestinal requirement. Like, that is so
I
genius.
think that's what's really funny about that is a few years ago, a guy for the Indians went into the hospital when they asked like what he got admitted for. Terry Francona, the manager of the Indians, who like kind of like in some ways reminds me of Larry David a little bit. Like, the quote from him was, "Well, he's experiencing a little bit of intestinal turmoil," and I wonder, like, if that was kind of a not like a nod to it. Obviously, he wasn't doing that in the moment, but like that was just kind of like one of those subconscious things in the back of his mind from something like this, because Tito strikes me as somebody who could get down with Seinfeld.
Oh, sure. I think too with this episode, in, having watched all these episodes so many times, is this an episode, that could have been any season of Seinfeld, because it is just ridiculous enough to fall in those later seasons, but then it's just like clever enough to be in those early seasons. And it happens, it's the penultimate episode of season 2. And the last episode is the busboy, which is actually not one of my favorite episodes. So like, this was like a turning point for Seinfeld, I think, in that realm, because, arguably people say 3, 4, 5 are like the best seasons of Seinfeld. I tend to disagree, but this wasn't.
They won the Grammys, or not the Grammys.
They won
the Emmys or whatever.
They had fewer Emmys. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Completely ridiculous.
Frasier can fuck off.
But this, to me, like, the reason why I think like this episode stands out to me and why I thought it was a great pick is, like, to me, this isn't an Elaine episode. Even though it's George's phone thing, it's just like, she's so hangry. Like, before hangry is even a term, she's just like, I don't understand. Like, it shouldn't be first come, first serve. It should be who's hungriest. And Jerry's like going to pay her $50 to just grab an egg roll off the table. And it's just like, it's so Elaine in her element of just like getting so mad, but not actually ever doing anything about it, which is like sets up Elaine going forward, which that's something that I have, is someone who I think has always kind of said like Elaine is my favorite character on the show because of the rage. She has more rage than even George. It's just a different kind of rage. And this is the way to like show that. And, it's just such, like you said, Tyler, it's such a like relatable episode. A lot of times you'll watch Seinfeld and it's not necessarily relatable. Those things could happen, but like we've all done this and we've all made those jokes. But to see somebody else go through it is like not something you ever see. You don't care about other people waiting when you're just at the restaurant yourself. And that's what made this episode so great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's things like Kramer going to the track and winning 30 grand and then getting mugged on the subway and then a blind guy turning out to be a cop. And it's just like, oh, that's kind of cool. But like, I can't relate to that. That's just like, whatever. I guess you wrote that for somebody in New York. I don't know. And then there's something like this where it's like, it doesn't matter where you are in the country. You have been waiting hangry to get some freaking food and you're on your way to do something. So I guess Larry Charles actually added that bit in to please the gods of NBC because they were like, this is stupid. Yeah, there's nothing here. And he was like, well, what if we add like a time construction element to it? Like we're compressed for time and we have to get the hell out of here because we're on our way to do something. And they're like, okay, that could work. Yeah, we have to go to the movies. So, so there's so many like production tidbits that go into this that are really revealing and cool. Like Larry David saying he was going to quit the show if they had to make any drastic alterations. You're never going to know that 25 years ago, but like the big Cartwright. That's
who's Cartwright?
There was a guy that was I'm Cartwright. You're not Cartwright. I know I'm not Cartwright. But somebody, I don't know if it was a writer or somebody revealed that Cartwright was kind of like a Costanza rhymes with Bonanza.
Yeah.
And the Bonanza family was actually following the Cartwrights. Yep. So I don't know who would ever figure that out or know that, but yeah, that's something that
a couple of things about this. Michael Richards not in this episode. One of two Kramerless episodes, the other being The Pen.
Another great episode.
This episode, as you kind of mentioned, Ty, is set in real time. There's no scene cuts. It's in the restaurant the entire time. Now, I don't think it's one continuous shot because they do.
Yeah, there are cuts. It's just not a scene cut. So they're not just. It's not like Birdman or whatever that Michael Keaton movie is.
And then, as you both kind of mentioned, the executives at NBC initially wanted to make a litany of changes because they thought it lacked an involved story. I think the audience would be disinterested.
Like, have they ever seen Seinfeld?
And then this was, like a quote, and I'm paraphrasing here because I saw this, was Jerry had said that this was kind of the episode where the executives kind of just had to say, we don't understand what you're doing here, but you've had enough success with it to this point that we're just going to let you do what you need to do. And I think that kind of plays a little bit into what Greg said, where it was like, this is kind of like the moment where things started to go just completely off the rails, because like the later scenes, as we mentioned in last week's episode with the chicken roaster, they're just complete insanity. You know what I mean? And I think that this is sort of like Greg kind of alluded to, kind of like a turning point for that, where the executives acknowledge that we don't necessarily understand what you've got going on here, but it seems to work. So we're going to just roll with it, which is funny because we say so often on this show, make something new, but everything is so overproduced at this point in terms of just media in general.
Oh, they're just trying to hit a mark.
Yeah. They're just trying to, And so I think the odds of something like Seinfeld coming along that's just truly clever in a way that is very original is like the odds of that happening are basically slim to none at this point.
I don't know about that. I mean, Vince Gilligan with Breaking Bad.
Well, I mean, I guess from a comedic standpoint.
Yeah, I guess that's
because the other thing being,
I still don't know that I agree with that
these days.
So I don't know that sitcoms is maybe the what's the term for the venue or the medium that you're going to see that in. or like people like Bo Burnham or, actual comedians, putting up like stand-up comedy routines are still coming up with original content and putting in a lot of thought. So like Bo Burnham puts songs together and it's like an actual entertaining hour-long performance that is, really well thought out, and there's a storyline to a lot of the material and everything. But that's just one example that I can think of.
Eric Andre,
it's original. It's
very much his own, and I would, no one's. I don't think a lot of people would ever say like Seinfeld is the person they look to, because a lot of times Seinfeld was just like so understated. He doesn't swear. He doesn't talk about anything dirty. There's nothing about his stand-up that like is what you see with most people, except for like a few guys out there. But I think subconsciously there is always a Seinfeld element with anyone that's in like our age group that does stand up, whether you know it or not. Just the observational humor is always kind of there with most people. And this is like, and to go back on this show is like, that is, to me, this is the most observational episode you can basically have. I think it is the most observational episode of Seinfeld, where it is literally
Brian Regan's another comedian that does that kind of stuff, and he has a new thing that came out. It was amazing.
Totally agree. And it's just like one of those things where it's just like there's something about using observational humor that, he is, I think, the king of that, and for people to use it and not necessarily even know it, because you're not stealing anything. Everybody is stealing from everyone. That's Jerry stole from people. Everybody, you're always doing it, as long as you don't blatantly do it like some comedians have. But that's like, like you said with Brian Regan, it's just like Brian Regan's the closest we have to Jerry Seinfeld. He's just a little bit more, he's animated. Jerry is not animated when he does stand up.
It's almost like Brian Regan went to mime school or something. Yeah.
Who's the dude that just went to rehab?
John Mulaney.
John
Mulaney. Yeah. I know he's a lot like Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, Chris D'Elia went to rehab for a different reason.
Yeah. I guess my point is less comedy in general with like stand-ups and what have you is just, I just don't think I think the odds of us getting a comedy, a sitcom, yeah, a TV show, basically a week in, week out, this is what it's going to be. I mean, we really grew up in a time that was kind of like a renaissance for that, because it was really big in the 70s, with like Archie Bunker and all that. And then like it kind of got real family focused in the early 90s with like Family Matters, Step by Step, Full House, all that stuff. But then, Seinfeld and Friends, and then roll that into like The Office and things like that. We really, I mean, I think kind of a golden era of television comedy.
Yeah. Well, like Louis C.K. had a really funny sitcom TV show, but there was also, you could tell like it wasn't just like his jokes.
Yeah.
Like there was definitely like a production quality to it that was substantially higher level than Seinfeld. It wasn't just the comedy. Right? It was,
yeah.
Yeah. So it was a different kind of show than Seinfeld, but like that's probably like the closest thing you're going to get is like somebody going picking a funny comedian out and saying like, hey, why don't you just make us a show? But like we're going to also have our hands all over it.
But like another funny comedian said, it's like, well, you go ask a farmer, you can farm, can you cook?
Mitch Hedberg.
I think it was the other way around, asking you to cook. Oh, good, you can cook. Can you farm?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's it. But back to the episode. I mean, Cartwright.
So probably the main reason I picked this episode is Nikki had never watched Seinfeld, my Mrs. McAfoose. The big thing that led me to pick this one was, as we're watching through like the first few seasons, she hasn't made it through all 9 yet, just because she's a busy lady.
She also goes to bed at 5:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, she sure does. So we made it through like the first 4 or 5 seasons, and when George said for $50, I'd put my face in their soup and blow. She did what Greg's doing right now. I mean, she could not contain herself. She peed her pants. She cried on her face. I mean, it was ridiculous. So that's a memory that I'm gonna have for the rest of my life is her hearing George say that he would blow in someone's soup for $50.
Having the experience of watching this show, like, because I'm doing the same thing with Janie, it's incredible.
Their first impression.
I mean, how old was I? I think I started really watching Seinfeld when I was like 8 years old. So like in the moment, season 4, maybe. And it's just like, I don't remember how I reacted. I just knew that I liked it. And it's like, to go and do that, it's like, that's funny. You're having the same experience. It's just like, holy crap, I'm seeing someone actually experience this at like an age too, where like you're going to get a lot more of the jokes than even with the innuendo and stuff. And it's like, this is incredible. So it's like, it is a treat. I mean, you and I have watched this show more than probably most people.
More hours than we've slept.
Oh yeah, it seems like it for sure. And it's like to watch somebody else experience it for the first time. It's like, holy cow, this is one of those great episodes. So there are so many like just funny one-liners in there that you don't think about when you've seen it 70 times, and then you see somebody just laugh, like you said with the soup comment. It's so good.
Well, hey, because he doesn't recognize who it is. He's like, oh, what have you been doing? Oh, just stuff and just kind of, like, that's so relatable because I don't know who the hell you are, but I need to just figure it out here. And then it's like, oh, this is Elaine.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be Uncle Leo's like secretary
or works in his office or whatever the hell it is. Yeah. Oh, so man. Right on the head. Just like nailed it, and he's a terrible actor, but he made you feel like you're in that moment.
Because we're all terrible actors in that moment. Anytime we run into someone where we're like, I know this person, but I can't place them, you're always just like,
it's you.
How are you doing?
Yeah.
I
think
just don't use their name.
Like you said, Greg, when you're younger, I feel like Kramer's probably most appealing to younger people because he has so much physical humor. And then as you get older, you kind of realize like, no, George
just makes the money here.
George is easily the funniest character because he's such an awful person.
Well, they're all awful people.
Yeah, which we've discussed. But George saying that he's going to blow in somebody's super for $50 just shows you like what type of person he is. And the other thing is, I would say that we all know somebody like that.
In the exact same episode, in this episode, he has two cringy how cheap he is moments. He says, "I'd blow in their soup for $50," but then he also says, $20 to grease the maitre d'. Like, isn't that excessive? It's more than the meal. $7.76. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to eat that much.
I'm counting your shrimps.
And it's just like so revealing, I guess, of the character that he's supposed to be playing. And you see Curb Your Enthusiasm, you're like, oh okay, it's this guy.
Yeah. And I would say, like I said, I feel like everybody knows somebody like George. I may be that person. You know what I mean? In many respects. But that's the thing.
I don't think you would know if you were, though. That's the thing with George. He doesn't know that he is that character,
Well, we already have a George.
Yeah.
Great pull on the episode, Chinese Restaurant, episode 11, season 2, streaming on Hulu. If you are in the Jones to watch some of these episodes as we go along, they are streaming on Hulu. And again, for the FDA or the FFC or whoever, no financial advice was given. There was no talk of stocks.
Food and Drug Administration.
It doesn't matter.
The FDR.
There was no money strange.
I think that probably goes without saying.
Hands, the CDC, whomever. Everything was done on the up and up. This was merely a comedic appearance.
I was not compensated for my appearance.
Well, neither are we.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again.
Yeah, you too, bro.